The alarm pierced the silence at 5:30 a.m., just like every other morning for the past 2 years. Natalie Brooks opened her eyes slowly, staring at the cream ceiling of the bedroom she shared with a man who felt like a stranger. Christopher Blake, her husband of 2 years, slept with his back turned toward her, maintaining the invisible wall they had built between them since their wedding day. Natalie carefully slipped out of bed, her bare feet touching the cold hardwood floor. The penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, but it felt more like a beautiful prison than a home. Every piece of furniture was perfectly placed, every surface spotless. Yet the space lacked any warmth or genuine life. In the modern kitchen, with its marble countertops and stainless steel appliances, Natalie made her morning coffee. 6 o'clock sharp. Always 6 o'clock, because at 6:15 Christopher would come down for his own coffee. They had an unspoken agreement to minimize their interactions, crossing paths only when absolutely necessary. "Good morning, Mrs. Blake," Rosa, the housekeeper, said softly as she entered the kitchen wearing her crisp uniform. "Good morning, Rosa," Natalie replied, forcing a small smile. Sometimes these were the only words she spoke aloud all day. Through the large windows, Natalie watched the sun rise over the lake, painting the water in shades of gold and pink. It was beautiful, but cold, much like everything else in her life. 2 years of marriage, over 17,000 hours of living together, yet they had probably exchanged fewer than 100 meaningful words. "Good morning, good night, thank you, excuse me." Polite phrases between well-mannered strangers, the sound of Christopher's footsteps on the stairs, made her heart tighten with familiar anxiety. She quickly grabbed her coffee mug and hurried to the study on the second floor, where she spent her days translating documents for international companies. The freelance work kept her busy and, more importantly, kept her away from him. When she heard the garage door close, signaling Christopher's departure to Blake Industries headquarters, Natalie finally relaxed her shoulders. Another day of forced peace had begun. An unexpected request. It was 7 in the evening when Natalie heard Christopher's car pulling into the garage. She quickly closed her laptop, preparing for another night of solitary dinner, when she heard something unusual. Footsteps climbing the stairs toward the study. 3 soft knocks on the door made her heart race. In 2 years, Christopher had never come to the study. Natalie. His voice sounded different, uncertain. "Come in," she responded, trying to hide her nervousness. Christopher opened the door slowly. At 33, he was undeniably handsome, with his dark hair always perfectly styled, sharp gray eyes that rarely met hers, and an imposing height that filled any room. He wore a navy blue suit that emphasized his broad shoulders, but there was something different in his posture today. His hands trembled slightly. "I need to talk to you," he said, unable to look directly at her. Natalie felt the air leave her lungs. This had to be about divorce. He had finally decided to end this charade. "Of course," she murmured, closing her laptop completely. Christopher entered the study with his hands in his pockets. The space suddenly felt too small for both of them. "There is an important event tomorrow night at the Drake Hotel. International investors. Interested in our real estate projects?" He paused, running a hand through his hair. "I need you to accompany me." The words came out quickly, as if he wanted to get rid of them as soon as possible. Natalie blinked several times, assessing what she had heard. In 2 years of marriage, this was undoubtedly the longest conversation they had ever had. "You want me to go with you to Chicago?" she asked incredulously. "It is important for the company. These investors value family stability. A married man conveys more trust." Christopher finally looked into her eyes. "It is just one event. One night." Natalie felt a mixture of anger and curiosity. After 2 years of being treated as if she were invisible, now she was suddenly useful. And why should I accept? The question came out sharper than she intended. For the first time, Christopher seemed genuinely surprised by her reaction. His eyes widened slightly. "Well, we are a husband and wife," he said, as if that explained everything. "On paper," Natalie replied, standing up from her chair. "Only on paper? Christopher, you have ignored me for 2 years. You treat me like a ghost in this house, and now you need a decorative wife to impress investors?" The silence that followed was different from their usual silences. This one was charged with tension, with words left unsaid for years. We leave tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon, he finally said, returning to his executive voice. The event starts at 8. We return the next morning. Natalie watched him head toward the door. But something made her speak. Christopher. He stopped without turning around. Next time you need me as an accessory, at least have the courtesy to ask instead of simply informing me. She saw his shoulders tense. For a moment she thought he was going to say something, but Christopher simply left, leaving behind only the subtle scent of his cologne and a completely confused Natalie. For the first time in 2 years, she was certain that something fundamental was about to change. The question was, for better or for worse? The gala night the next evening, Natalie stood in front of her walk-in closet, running her fingers over the expensive clothes hanging in chromatic order, designer dresses, gifts from her mother-in-law that she rarely wore. After all, who was there to dress up for when you lived like a ghost? She found a dress that had been a gift for her 27th birthday 3 months ago. Christopher had not even remembered the date, but Margaret Blake, her mother, had sent a box containing an emerald green silk dress. Perfect, Natalie murmured, taking the dress off the hanger at exactly 3 o'clock. A black town car stopped in front of their building. The drive to the Drake Hotel was silent. Christopher typing on his phone while Natalie watched the city pass by through tinted windows at the hotel. They were led to a private suite to prepare. Natalie took her time getting ready, applying makeup carefully, styling her auburn hair in soft waves. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, Christopher looked up from his laptop and froze. The emerald dress hugged her curves perfectly. And for the first time in 2 years, Natalie felt beautiful. You look nice, Christopher said quietly, his voice catching slightly. Thank you, she replied. Surprised by the compliment, the ballroom of the Drake Hotel was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over the space decorated with white roses and flickering candles. Business executives in suits and women in evening gowns circulated with champagne glasses, speaking in various languages about deals worth millions. Christopher. Wonderful to see you. A tall man with silver hair approached with a warm smile. And this must be your wife. James, let me introduce you to Natalie, my wife, Christopher said, placing his hand lightly on her back. The touch, even formal, made Natalie shiver. It is a pleasure to meet you, Natalie, James said in perfect English. I am James Richardson from Richardson Property Group. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Richardson. Natalie responded in the same language, extending her hand elegantly. I've heard excellent things about your sustainable development projects in California.
Oh.
James's eyes lit up. You follow the real estate market? Professionally, yes. I worked as a consultant for several international firms before focusing on other projects. Natalie glanced meaningfully at Christopher. Christopher watched her with an expression she had never seen before. Surprise, admiration, something she could not quite identify. For the next hour, Natalie circulated through the ballroom alongside Christopher, conversing fluently in English and French with the investors. She discussed market trends, sustainable construction, and growth opportunities with knowledge that impressed everyone, including her own husband. Your wife is brilliant, German businesswoman commented to Christopher, while Natalie conversed animatedly with a group of investors. You are a lucky man. Christopher followed the woman's gaze to Natalie, whose eyes sparkled in a way he had never noticed before, or perhaps had never truly looked. Yes, he murmured. I am. An old friend returns? It was nearly 10 at night when Natalie headed to the bar for water. She felt confident for the first time in years when a masculine voice surprised her. Excuse me, are you not Natalie Brooks? She turned to find a handsome man with brown hair, about 35 years old, wearing an elegant suit and smiling warmly. I am Natalie Brooks Blake now, she corrected politely. And you are? Robert Chen. We were in the same class at university, remember? I sat 2 rows behind you in international markets. The memory returned instantly. Robert Chen, the brilliant student who always asked intelligent questions during class. Now he was more mature, more confident, but the smile was the same. Of course, Robert. How are you? Very well. I have a consulting firm in international trade here in Chicago. And you, are you still in the field? I work freelance, mainly translations and occasional consulting, Natalie admitted, feeling slightly embarrassed. What a waste, Robert said, shaking his head. You were one of the best students in our class. With your experience in international markets, you could be running any multinational company. Before Natalie could respond, she felt a familiar presence behind her. Christopher approached, his posture more rigid than usual. Natalie, he said with a tone she could not identify. Christopher, this is Robert Chen, a college classmate. Robert, my husband, Christopher Blake. The two men shook hands formally, but Natalie noted a subtle tension in the air. Actually, Robert said, addressing Natalie directly, I am expanding my firm and looking for someone with your profile. How about dinner tomorrow night at Alinea? I have a proposal that might interest you. The silence that followed was loaded with tension. Natalie felt Christopher's gaze burning her skin. But there was something intriguing about Robert's invitation. An opportunity to be valued professionally after years of invisibility. We return home tomorrow morning, Christopher said. His voice controlled but firm. What a shame, Robert said, but his eyes remained fixed on Natalie. Then perhaps in the future, you have my card. When Robert walked away after exchanging contacts with Natalie, she noticed Christopher was different. His fists were clenched, and there was something in his eyes she had never seen before. Jealousy. Ready to leave? Christopher asked, his voice rougher than usual, in the elevator on the way to their suite. The silence between them was deafening. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, Christopher walked out first with determined steps. We have separate rooms, he said tersely, handing her a keycard. We leave at 8 in the morning, but something in his tone made Natalie step forward. For the first time in 2 years, she was not going to simply accept being dismissed. We need to talk. Christopher turned to face her. His gray eyes reflecting emotions she had never seen there before. And in that moment, everything began to change. Natalie woke up at 7 in the morning to the soft sound of her hotel phone ringing. Christopher's voice on the other end was different. Less formal, more hesitant. Good morning. I know we planned to leave early, but I thought maybe we could have breakfast together first. If you want to, she blinked several times, making sure she was not dreaming. Christopher Blake was voluntarily asking to spend more time with her. I would like that, she replied, her voice still soft from sleep. There is a cafe downstairs. Meet me in 30 minutes? When Natalie entered the hotel restaurant, she found Christopher already seated at a corner table by the window overlooking Michigan Avenue. He was not wearing his usual business suit. Instead, he wore a simple white shirt and dark jeans. His hair was slightly tousled and he looked younger, more approachable. I ordered coffee, he said as she sat down. I remembered you take it with cream and 1 sugar. Natalie felt a flutter in her chest. He had noticed how she took her coffee. They ordered breakfast in awkward silence. But it was a different kind of silence than they were used to. This one felt less hostile, more uncertain, like two people standing at the edge of something new and frightening. About last night, Christopher began, setting down his coffee cup. I owe you an apology. For what specifically? Natalie asked, meeting his eyes. For everything. For 2 years of treating you like you were invisible. For only noticing you when it served my business interests. For not seeing what was right in front of me all along. Sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. This was not the cold, distant man she had lived with for 2 years. What changed? She asked softly. Christopher ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of nervousness she had never seen from him before. Watching you last night, seeing you talk with those investors, seeing how intelligent and capable you are, seeing another man look at you with genuine interest, it made me realize what an absolute fool I have been. You were jealous, Natalie said, not as a question but as a statement. Terribly, he admitted with a rueful smile. I stood there watching Robert Chen look at my wife like she was the most fascinating person in the room. I realized that she is. And I had wasted 2 years pretending she did not exist. Their food arrived, but neither of them seemed very interested in eating. There were more important things to discuss. Why did you keep your distance all this time? Natalie asked. Our marriage was arranged by our families, yes. But that does not explain the complete emotional shutdown. Christopher was quiet for a long moment, staring at his untouched eggs. My father raised me to believe that emotions were weaknesses, that business always came first, that personal relationships were just another form of transaction. He looked up at her, his gray eyes reflecting pain. When our families arranged this marriage, he told me to keep it professional, to maintain distance, to not let feelings complicate what was essentially a business arrangement. Natalie felt her chest tighten. And you just followed his orders? I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting both of us from getting hurt in a situation neither of us chose. Christopher reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. But I was wrong. I hurt you anyway. Hurt us both. What about now? Natalie asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Is this just the next phase of following your father's instructions? Make the marriage look more convincing? No. Christopher's response was immediate and forceful. What I am feeling now has nothing to do with my father, or the company, or any business arrangement. Last night, when I saw you shine, when I saw you being yourself, I realized I have been in love with someone I never let myself know. And I want to change that. If you will let me, Natalie studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. But all she saw was vulnerability and hope. I want to know everything about you, Christopher continued. Your favorite book. What makes you laugh? What you dream about at 3 a.m. I want to know the real Natalie, not just the woman who lives in my house. That will take time, Natalie said carefully. You cannot just erase 2 years of loneliness with one breakfast. I know. And I am not asking you to forgive me right away. I am just asking for a chance to try. To start over. To do this right, Natalie looked out the window at the bustling Chicago street below. People rushing to work, living their lives, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in this restaurant booth. My favorite color is lavender, she said finally, turning back to him. I take long baths when I'm stressed. I cry during commercials with dogs. And I've always dreamed of opening my own consulting firm, but I gave up that dream when we got married. Christopher leaned forward, listening intently to every word. And you? She asked. Who is Christopher Blake when he is not being the CEO? I hate wearing ties, he admitted with a small smile. I play piano, though no one knows that. I volunteer at a literacy program on Saturdays, or I did before I stopped making time for anything but work. And I have been terrified of turning into my father my entire life. They talked through breakfast, then through a second cup of coffee, then through brunch. The conversation flowed naturally, two strangers becoming acquainted. Two people discovering they actually liked each other. A new beginning. They did not return home that morning. Instead, Christopher suggested they spend the day in Chicago, just the two of them. They walked along the lakefront, visited the Art Institute, ate hot dogs from a street vendor. It felt like a first date, awkward and exciting and full of possibility. I used to come here with my nanny when I was a kid, Christopher said as they stood in front of a Monet painting. My parents were always too busy, but Mrs. Patterson would bring me here every month. She said art made people more human. Sounds wonderful, Natalie said, watching the way his face softened when he talked about the older woman. She was the only person who really loved me growing up. My parents loved what I represented, the heir to their empire, but Mrs. Patterson loved me. The kid who liked to build things with blocks and asked too many questions. What happened to her? She retired when I turned 18. Moved to Florida. We still talk on the phone sometimes, but not as much as we should. Natalie slipped her hand into his, the first time she had initiated physical contact between them. Christopher looked down at their joined hands with wonder, as if he could not quite believe it was happening. That evening, instead of rushing back, they checked into the hotel for another night. They had separate rooms again, but this time it felt different. This time, it was about respect and taking things slowly, not about distance and avoidance. Christopher walked Natalie to her room. Thank you for today, he said, standing in the hallway outside her door. For giving me a chance? Thank you for finally seeing me, Natalie replied. They stood there for a moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Christopher leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. When his lips touched hers, it was soft and tentative, question more than a statement. Natalie kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Natalie, Christopher whispered, good night. Christopher, building trust over the next few weeks, their relationship transformed. Christopher started coming home for lunch. They had dinner together every night, talking for hours about everything and nothing. He brought her flowers, not expensive bouquets from fancy florists, but simple wildflowers he picked up from street vendors because he noticed she smiled when she saw them. One Saturday, Christopher took Natalie to meet Mrs. Patterson, who now lived in a modest house in suburban Oak Park. The elderly woman hugged Christopher tight, then turned her sharp blue eyes on Natalie. "See her the wife?" Mrs. Patterson said, looking her up and down. "The one who finally got through to this stubborn boy." "I am trying," Natalie said with a smile. "Over tea and homemade cookies." Mrs. Patterson told stories of young Christopher, the sensitive boy who hid behind business magazines because he was afraid of seeming weak. His father did a number on him, Mrs. Patterson said bluntly. Tried to turn him into a machine instead of a man. "But I always knew there was a good heart in there, just waiting for the right person to bring it out." On the drive home, Christopher was quiet. "What are you thinking?" Natalie asked. "That I wasted so much time. We could have had this all along if I'd just been brave enough to defy my father." "We have it now," Natalie said firmly. "That is what matters." That night, they made love for the first time. It was tender and awkward and perfect. Two people learning each other's bodies. Discovering what it meant to be truly intimate with someone. Afterward, lying in Christopher's arms in his bed, which had become their bed, Natalie felt a contentment she had never known. "I love you," Christopher whispered into her hair. "I love you too," she whispered back. For the first time in 2 years, Natalie believed in their future together. Believed they could build something real and lasting, but neither of them knew that in just a few days, Natalie would discover a truth that would shatter this fragile new happiness and test whether their love was strong enough to survive. Cracks in the foundation. It started with a phone call. Natalie was alone in the penthouse when Christopher's mother, Margaret Blake, called asking to speak with her son. When Natalie explained he was at a construction site, Margaret's voice turned cold. "Tell him the quarterly board meeting is next week. Remind him that the terms of the arrangement require certain appearances." "Arrangement?" Natalie asked, her stomach dropping. There was a long pause. "Never mind. Just have him call me." After Margaret hung up, Natalie could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. What arrangement was she talking about? What terms? The next day, while Christopher was at work, Natalie found herself in his home office looking for a stapler. She tried not to snoop. Truly she did. But when a leather folder fell from a drawer, paper spilling across the floor, her own name caught her eye. With shaking hands, she picked up the document. Business acquisition agreement and marital union, Blake Industries, and Brooks Consulting. Her blood ran cold as she read through the contract. Their marriage was not just arranged, it was purchased. Blake Industries had acquired her father's failing consulting firm for $5 million, absorbing all debts. In exchange, Natalie would marry Christopher and remain married for a minimum of 3 years, making necessary public appearances to maintain the company's family-friendly image. There were clauses about behavior, residence, social appearances, and worse, there were email exchanges between their parents, discussing her like she was a commodity. "The girl is well-educated and presentable. She will be a good wife for our son and good for the company image. Margaret Blake Natalie is obedient and will not cause problems. She understands family responsibility." Daniel Brooks Natalie's hands shook as she found the most damaging message. "Christopher understands this is a business arrangement. No need for actual emotional involvement. Maintain appropriate distance until company goals are achieved." Jonathan Blake, Christopher's father, everything made sense now.
Oh.
The 2 years of coldness were not just about emotional distance. They were part of the plan. And now, the sudden warmth, the romance, the declarations of love, was this just the next phase of the arrangement? She was still sitting on the floor, surrounded by papers, when Christopher came home early. "Natalie, what are you doing in here?" She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Tell me the truth," she said, her voice breaking. "Is any of this real, or am I just part of your father's business plan?" Christopher's face went white as he saw the papers spread around her, and in that moment, everything they had built together began to crumble. Christopher stood frozen in the doorway of his office, his face drained of color as he stared at the papers scattered around Natalie. The silence stretched between them, heavy with betrayal and hurt. "How long have you known?" Natalie asked, her voice eerily calm despite the tears on her cheeks. "Known what?" Christopher's voice was barely audible. "Do not insult me by playing dumb." She stood up, holding the contract in her trembling hands. "How long have you known that our marriage was a business transaction? That my father sold me? To save his company?" Christopher closed his eyes, his jaw clenching. "From the beginning, my father presented it to me 3 days before our wedding. The admission hit Natalie like a physical blow. She had suspected, but hearing him confirm it made it real. And you went through with it anyway. You married me knowing I was essentially purchased. It was not like that, Christopher said, taking a step toward her. Then what was it like? Natalie's voice rose. Explain to me how my father trading me for $5 million is not exactly like that. Your father's company was drowning. The deal saved not just the business, but your family's entire financial future. My father saw an opportunity for a merger that would benefit both families. Benefit both families? Natalie laughed bitterly. How exactly did I benefit from being treated like property? From 2 years of living like a ghost in this beautiful prison? Christopher ran his hands through his hair, the gesture she had come to recognize as his tell when he was struggling. You are right. You did not benefit. You suffered. And I am sorry, Natalie. I am so deeply sorry. Your father's email said you were supposed to maintain distance, that there should be no emotional involvement. She held up the printed email. You followed his instructions perfectly for 2 years. So tell me, Christopher, when did that change? Or did it change at all? What are you asking? I am asking if these past few weeks have been real, or if you just received new instructions from your father. Make the arrangement more convincing, maybe. Sure, she stays for the full 3 years. The hurt that flashed across Christopher's face looked genuine, but Natalie could not trust her own judgment anymore. You think I have been pretending? He asked quietly. You think these feelings are fake? I do not know what to think anymore. I thought we were building something real, but it was built on a foundation of lies. Christopher moved closer, and Natalie instinctively stepped back. The hurt in his eyes deepened. Everything I told you was true. Everything I felt was real. Yes, I followed my father's instructions for 2 years. Yes. I kept my distance because he told me to. But what happened after the gala, after I saw you truly for the first time, that had nothing to do with him or his plans? How can I believe that? Natalie's voice broke. How can I trust anything you say when our entire relationship started as a lie? Because I am choosing you over him, Christopher said intensely. I am choosing us over the company, over the arrangement, over everything my father planned. Words are easy, Christopher. Then let me show you. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Natalie heard it ring once, twice, then a gruff voice answered. Father, I need to talk to you now. I am coming to your office. He hung up and looked at Natalie. Come with me. Let me prove to you that what I feel is real. Facing the father 20 minutes later, they walked into Jonathan Blake's corner office at Blake Industries headquarters. Christopher's father was a tall, imposing man in his 60s, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He barely glanced at Natalie before addressing his son. Christopher, what is so urgent that you had to interrupt my meeting? I found the contract, Natalie said before Christopher could speak. I know the truth about our marriage. Jonathan's expression did not change. I see, and I assume you are upset. Upset? Natalie's voice rose. You and my father treated me like property. You arranged my life like a business deal. It was a business deal, Jonathan said dismissively. One that benefited everyone involved. Your father got to save his company. Christopher got a suitable wife. The family image was strengthened. I fail to see the problem. Problem is that I am a human being, not an asset to be traded. Christopher, Jonathan said, ignoring Natalie entirely. Control your wife. This emotional display is unnecessary. Do not talk to her like that, Christopher said, his voice hard. Jonathan raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? I said, do not talk to her like that. And she is not my wife because of your arrangement. She is my wife because I choose her, because I love her. Love, Jonathan scoffed. You are being ridiculous. This was never about love. It was about building the Blake empire, about ensuring continuity and stability. Then your empire can continue without me. The words hung in the air like a bomb. Jonathan's face turned red. What did you just say? Christopher took Natalie's hand, squeezing it gently. I am resigning from Blake Industries, effective immediately. I am walking away from the company, the board position, all of it. You cannot be serious. Everything I built was meant for you. No, Father. Everything you built was meant for you. I was just supposed to be the next generation of your ambitions. Christopher's voice was steady and clear. But I am done living my life according to your plans. I am done treating people like business transactions. I am done. If you walk away, you get nothing, Jonathan said coldly. No inheritance, no company shares, no family support. I do not need your money. I have my own skills and abilities. I will build something myself, something that is actually mine. And what about the contract? You owe 3 years. Sue me. Take me to court. I do not care anymore. Christopher turned to Natalie. The only thing I care about is proving to my wife that she is not a contract obligation, that she is the most important person in my life. Natalie felt tears streaming down her face, but these were different tears. These were tears of something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Jonathan stood up, his face twisted with rage. You are making the biggest mistake of your life, Christopher said calmly. The biggest mistake of my life was waiting 2 years to tell you that I am not you, and I never will be. He led Natalie out of the office, leaving his father sputtering behind them. Rebuilding on honest ground in the elevator going down, Natalie finally spoke. Did you mean all of that? About walking away from everything? Christopher looked at her, his gray eyes clear and certain. Every word. I meant every single word. But the company, your whole life, was never really mine. It was always his. Now I get to build something that is actually mine. That is ours, if you will have me. Natalie studied his face, searching for any sign of doubt or regret. She found none. I need you to understand something, she said carefully. This does not instantly fix 2 years of pain. This does not mean I automatically trust you completely. No, we will have to start over. Really start over with complete honesty this time. I would not want it any other way. And I'm going to call Robert Chen, take him up on that job offer. I need to rebuild my own career, be my own person. Christopher smiled. Good, you should. You are brilliant, and the world should know it. They walked out of the Blake Industries building into the cool Chicago evening. For the first time, Natalie felt like they were walking forward together, not as part of someone else's plan, but as two people choosing each other. What do we do now? She asked. Now, Christopher said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders, we go home. We order pizza. We sit on the couch and talk about everything, all the hard conversations we should have had 2 years ago. And we start building something real. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of their new apartment. A much smaller place in Lincoln Park that they had chosen together. No marble floors or designer furniture, but it was filled with warmth and laughter and evidence of actual life lived. Natalie was in the kitchen, making coffee when Christopher came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Morning, he murmured, kissing her neck. Morning yourself. Do not make me spill this coffee. Cannot make any promises. She turned in his arms and kissed him properly. After 6 months of truly getting to know each other, of therapy sessions and hard conversations and genuine connection, kissing him felt like coming home. I have something to tell you, Natalie said, setting down her coffee mug. Should I be worried? I am pregnant. Christopher's eyes went wide. You are. Really? Really? About 8 weeks. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. We are having a baby. An actual baby? Are you happy? Natalie asked, though she could see the answer on his face. I'm terrified and ecstatic and completely unprepared, and so incredibly happy I could burst. He set her down gently. Are you happy? Yes, Natalie said, meaning it completely. Yes, I am. This baby, Christopher said, placing his hand gently on her still flat stomach, will grow up knowing they were wanted, knowing they were loved, knowing that they are more than a business plan or a family obligation. They will grow up knowing what real love looks like, Natalie agreed. Christopher's construction business was doing well. Small projects at first, but he was building a reputation for integrity and quality work. Natalie had joined Robert Chen's consulting firm and was thriving. Her talents finally being recognized and valued. They had each other's backs. They were partners in every sense of the word. Resolution 3 days later, Christopher received a call from an unexpected source. His mother. Christopher, I need to talk to you, please. They met at a neutral location, a cafe in the Loop. Margaret Blake looked older. more tired than he remembered. "Your father and I are divorcing," she said without preamble. Christopher was speechless. "What you said in his office that day about not being him, about choosing love over business, it made me think. I have spent 35 years in a loveless marriage because it was good for business, good for the family image." Margaret's eyes were wet. "I do not want to spend whatever time I have left living a lie." "Mom, you were right," she interrupted, "and I am sorry. I am sorry for my part in arranging your marriage like a business deal. I am sorry for not protecting you from your father's ambitions. I am sorry for so much." Christopher reached across the table and took her hand. "Thank you for saying that. Natalie is good for you. I could see it that night at the gala, but I was too caught up in maintaining appearances to admit it." Margaret squeezed his hand. "I hope you will let me try to be better. To be an actual grandmother to your child, not just another obligation." "You would like that," Christopher said. "But it has to be real. No more games, no more appearances." "I understand, real. That is all I want too." 1 year later, Natalie woke to the sound of crying from the nursery. Before she could move, Christopher was already up. "I have got her," he whispered. Kissing her forehead, she lay in bed, listening to his soft voice through the baby monitor as he comforted their 6-month-old daughter. Emma rose.
Hey there, little one.
"Did you have a bad dream?" "It is okay. Daddy is here. I have got you." Natalie smiled in the darkness. This was the life they had built together. Not perfect, still with challenges and hard days, but real, honest, full of love. She heard footsteps and looked up to see Christopher in the doorway. Emma asleep on his shoulder. "She just wanted some cuddles," he said softly. "Bring her here." Christopher carefully laid Emma between them in the bed. She was beautiful, with Natalie's auburn hair and Christopher's gray eyes. "I love you," Christopher whispered to Natalie across their sleeping daughter. "I love you too." At this time, there were no contracts, no arrangements, no obligations behind the words. Just two people who had found each other despite the odds, who had chosen love over convenience, truth over appearances. Their story had not started as a fairy tale. It had started as a business transaction, cold and calculated, but they had rewritten their ending together. And that, Natalie thought as she drifted back to sleep, was better than any fairy tale could have been. Note, this story is complete across all 3 parts. The couple overcame the revelation of their arranged marriage contract. Christopher stood up to his father and chose love over business obligations. And they built an authentic relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. 1 year later, they have a daughter and have created the loving family they both always wanted.